Good morning, everyone. We're starting this week's the portion of Vayishlach, and I'm sharing with you a Rebbe's teaching from the book Likutei Sichos, volume 15, the first talk. We read about Yaakov sending messengers, agents, or angels, Rashi says angels, to Esav to let him know he's coming and he wants to be close with him and be treated and treat him like a loving brother. They come back with a report that Esav is coming back with all his weapons, and he also hired 400 men as soldiers to attack Yaakov and obliterate his family. The Torah reads that Vayira Yaakov me'od vayetzer lo. Yaakov feared very much, and he was pained by the news. What does he do? First, the Torah says, Vayomer, and he said to himself, Im yovoi Esav el hamachaneh achaz veikol, if Esav comes to the first camp and destroy it, vehoyo hamachaneh anisho lefleto, and the remaining camp will be left to survive. As later on, we see that he split the camps into two, hoping that the second camp will be be able to escape and run away. Rashi says the following, I am certain to survive. And Rashi goes on, because I will fight him. I will not let him just attack, but I'll fight him. And Rashi goes on to say, he prepared himself for three responses. The first is, Rashi says, a gift. The second is a prayer and to God, asking for help. And the third is a war. Prepare himself to take out all the weapons and be ready to attack or to defend himself. So there are three things he prepared himself: a gift, a prayer, and an attack. Says the Rebbe that Rashi said, I am certain that the remaining camp will survive. Where did Rashi know? Or let's go back. How does Yaakov is certain that the remaining camp will survive? After all, a man coming with 400 men, attacking one single man with little children and 4 wives and many servants that have no training, how is he certain? You can say that maybe, Even Ezra writes, Efshar, maybe I will survive. But the rabbis say that Rashi took the word vehaya. It is certainly that the remaining camp will survive. And therefore Rashi is forced to say, because I'll fight him back. Says the Rebbe, so you'll fight him back. There is no certainty. There is no such thing as if you fight back, you'll certainly be survived, or some of the camp will survive. You can attack him as much as you want, but if he's outnumbered and out-trained and much bigger army, there is definitely no certain.
Second camp can run away while the first camp is
and
fighting.
They cannot chase them?
Well, they fight while they're fighting.
So some rabbi says, while the first camp will be attacked, the second camp will run away.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that he's not going to catch them. After all, the second camp is women and children, right? The second camp is not riding horses or camels, and they are coming on horses and trained soldiers. They will attack and destroy. So the whole idea that the second camp is going to be separated and run away while the first is attacked, says the Rebbe, you can say that that's the best that's going to happen, the best scenario. But you cannot say, Vehoyo amachane anisha lefleto, it's certain that the remaining camp will survive. That's the first point the Rebbe is making. Yes, Mark?
The angels that beat up Esau and the army beforehand, would they be available to help? The ones that knocked him around, gave him an attitude adjustment?
Who?
The angels that came and were beating up Esau and his army until they said Yaakov's
right. So that's a medrash. But if that's the case, if they are on Yaakov's side, why did he fear? In other words, you cannot study the simple and then bring in the medrash, we need to understand a simple text. Rashi said, certainly I will survive, or the remaining camp will survive, because I'll fight him. Says Rashi, says the Rebbe, I don't understand. First, where does Rashi take that it's certain? And Rashi maybe uses the reason that because I'll fight him, fighting back will not guarantee survival. Then Rashi goes on to say that he prepared himself for three things: a gift, a war, and a gift, a prayer, and a war. So maybe, says the Rebbe, why does Rashi add this here? There is nothing yet. In fact, the idea of prayer comes later. The idea of gift is coming later. Here it's talking about separating the camp. So if that's the place for preparing for war, separating camp is preparation for war, I understand. But why are you bringing other facts, other activities that he was involved with to prepare when they are mentioned later? Later, not only that, the Medrash brings that the three things that he did later on when the third one is mentioned already. And the Rebbe says, even if you try to justify that this is the reason that he is certain to win, because he does three things, not one. He is fighting, he's given a gift, and he is praying to God. So there is no certainty, there is nothing to guarantee that he will be successful. And the Rebbe says later on, Rashi repeats the same thing. After we read about the third thing when he's begging God for help, we see that Rashi says, he prepared himself for three things: a gift, a prayer, and a war. So again, the question here, Rashi says when he divides the camp, Rashi says he prepared himself for war, and he says, I am certain that I will be victorious. It doesn't make sense. The second, be certain. The second is Rashi adds, he prepared himself for three things. This is not the place. You didn't even read about the other two activities. Wait until they're mentioned in the Torah. B, when they are mentioned later on, Rashi repeats the same thing, that he prepared himself for three things. And C, even if Rashi brought those two other activities to say that he's certain to be victorious, there is still, where is the source for it? Finally, the Rebbe is asking that the order of the three things makes no sense. When a man believes in God, the first thing you do when you face challenge is pray to God. Then you do whatever it takes to protect yourself. Rashi says gift, prayer, and war. Should have been prayer, gift, and war. Here is the Rebbe's explanation. I'm sharing with you very few questions. There is much, much more, because Rashi's proof is from different sections in the text, and the Medrash uses a whole different section. Says the Rebbe, this is the Rebbe's unbelievable understanding. The Rebbe says he prepared himself for three things. But the word prepare is not eichin. Eichin means achana, preparation. It says itkin. You know what itkin means? Letaken means to fix. Fixing something is takana. An actment, rabbinic actment, is called takanat chachamim. Itkin, Rashi says the word itkin, not eichin, which is very unique. What's the word itkin means? Says the Rebbe, it is mentally internal preparation. In other words, he had to be preparing his own mindset into those three things. It's not what he actually did, because what you actually do, the first thing is pray to God. But when it says itkin, he prepared himself mentally to do those things. Because the Torah reads just before that as soon as he heard, Vayetzer lo, it pained them greatly. And then, Vayomer, he says, if he comes to one camp, the other camp will remain intact. And says the Rebbe, the separation of camps, which is the war, if you read about what he says and what actually happened, is the two separate separations. Right at the beginning, when he said, I'm certain to win, to be victorious, he is separating the camps into two halves, assuming some would have animals and some would have humans, right? That's what's separating the camp. He has a camp made out of camels, donkeys, sheep, dogs, servants, maidservants, women, children. He's separating it into two. Says Rabbi, but actually when he faced Esav, we read clearly that all the women and all the children bow down to Esav. Everybody was there. So where was the separation of the camp into two? There is no separation of two. Says the Rebbe, if you look actually what he did, what he said he's going to do, he's not separating the camp into two separate camps that one would run away and survive, because that's not what he meant. He said to himself immediately, that's the internal mental preparation. He's separating the humans and the animals into two camps. And he says the humans is what's important. And I'm certain to win. You know why? Because I'm going to pray and I'm going to fight. So his actual preparation for war, and then says Rashi, prayer, and finally a gift, is a mental preparation. But realistic, what actually happened, he prayed to God. When did he separate the women and children and the animals? Next morning. You read in the morning, he prepares himself by separating the animals and the humans. It says, and as we know in reality, in actuality, when Esav is there, everybody bows down, everybody is there. What he did, he says, I have to fight him, and therefore I need to get rid of the excess goods. So I don't care about animals. Unlike what the other commentators explain, that the remaining camp, meaning half of the people, and they'll run away, the way I understand is the exact opposite. The animals and their servants, their shepherds, he put away. He said, let them get destroyed. I don't care. He put them away. He's not going to have any protection on them. And Esav and his men can go there, and if they want, they can attack it. But the remaining camp, meaning the women and children, the humans, I'm going to be with, and I'm going to fight. I'm certain I'm going to win, because I'm going to pray to God, and because I'm going to try to make a gift. Says the Rebbe, and what did you understand the answer?
Okay.
That's why Rashi said he's certain, because I'll fight. Not because I'm separating the camps, because I'll fight. Once I fight, I have the concentrated number of women and men. This is what I'm going to protect, and I'm not going to let go. Says the Rebbe, but we need to explain that he prepared himself mentally for all three: a gift, a prayer, and a war, a prayer, and a gift. And says the Rebbe, what was the real? This is the Yeno Shel Torah, the wine, the secretive point of the story. Says the Rebbe, if you look back on this story, there are quiet opposites, polar opposites between a gift and a war towards the same person. Do you understand that? When you are giving a gift to someone, you want to come closer. You want to appease him and show with them that you have nothing in your heart against him. When you prepare for war, what are you doing? You are telling him, you are my enemy and I'm going to kill you. How was he able to do both? In addition, prayer and war are two opposites. When you pray to God, you trust God that He is going to protect you. When you prepare for war, there is no God. You need to make sure, train yourself, and have all the tactics to kill and not get killed. And you're not relying on God. At the same time, he's praying. That's what Vayetzel, that's what pained them so much. He knew full well what to do. He knew full well that he's going to protect his people because he's responsible, and therefore he's going to pray to God, and he's going to also give him a gift. But those two opposites that walk from both ends, on one hand trying to give a gift, on the other hand to fight him, on one hand to pray to God, on the other hand to fight with his own bare hands, That's what caused him the pain, because it's two opposite in one human being. Says the Rebbe that in reality, if you look at the text, you will find that war came last. Only he prepared in the next morning. The prayer, in other words, once mentally he knew that he has to do what's take care of it, not get in despair, but fight back. How do you fight back? By splitting the camp into two and praying to God and sending a gift. What really happened, he actually prayed. Immediately he prays to God. Immediately after prayer, we read that what does he do? He does a gift to try and appease him through love. And only when those two are done, the next morning he's separating the camps, sending away the animals, and now concentrating on the core important. So there is a difference between what mentally happened to him versus what really happened. What really happened is prayer, gift, and war. What mentally happened is first war, prepare for war, pray to God, and give a gift. Why? Because the order is not to lose your mind and to understand what's the task ahead. And therefore, I'm going to protect them no matter what. I'm separating the animals and the shepherds, and I'm going to care for the humans. I'm going to make sure to protect, and I'm certain they won't die because I'll fight back. And immediately after, he's praying to God. So now it addresses many other questions. That's why Rashi is bringing here the sources. He's bringing it before the Torah addresses what he actually did, because now we're talking about what happens mentally inside his head. Later on, the verses describe what actually happened. The order that what happened was prayer first, a gift second, and a war third. But in reality, what happened in his head is he first prepared for war, knowing that this is important. He immediately prayed to God, and finally. And the reason Vayetzer lo, the pain, is simply because he had to deal with polar opposites about the same human, the same person. And that's very, very painful. I hope I covered the...
Thank you, Rabbi.
Oh, thank you.
Have a good chance, everybody.
That was